Bob, I want to jump onto a comment that we got here from Aramgard that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. They ask, is it possible Hezekiah didn't go on a shrine smashing spree, but found a way to spin what Sennacherib's army did? They destroyed every city except Jerusalem. Why wouldn't they have destroyed the shrines? So is it possible that Hezekiah's cultic reform is really some paint on the top of an external destruction?
That's a good theory, because we know that Hezekiah pays them off in 2 Kings 18, is it? And we get two stories in 2 Kings 18. Basically, he shows up and he's like, well, I've sinned. Whatever you want, I'm going to pay you. And then he comes again. We get this story of he comes a second time, and then he says, open the gates, surrender. And he's like, no, I will never surrender. And you get the story that's now corroborated by Sennacherib's prism that says he put it under siege, and then he left, which has him paying him off. So we get the payoff story corroborated, but the idea that the camp was annihilated, we don't have. The question is, and again, I'm writing a book on this. My theory, and we've done a video on this, my theory is that Hezekiah may have been the one that destroyed the Ark of the Covenant. Now, this is a controversial theory. Nobody likes this, but it goes back to the list that Hezekiah brags about of items that were sacred to the Lord, that God either commanded his people to build, the Nehushtan and these sacred things that were in the Hebrew Bible. God said, Moses, build this, and then have them look at it if they get bit by a snake, right? So these were items that were commanded, according to the Bible, by God to be built, and Hezekiah is bragging about tearing them down because he now sees them as idols, or as something that takes away from the worship of the deity in Jerusalem. And they look like idols. And if we now have a temple, wouldn't the Ark of the Covenant kind of be this idol? So maybe Hezekiah listed the Ark in there, and then somebody said, you can't do that, and just erased the Ark, and that's where the Ark went. It just disappeared into history. So it's gone. It did exist, and now it's gone. The question here is, maybe maybe Sennacherib took it, or maybe he gave it to Sennacherib, and they just whitewashed it by saying, I gave him the gold from the temple doors, I think it was. He stripped the gold off the temple doors. And one of the things he gave them was the Ark, and they just said, you can't do that, and they just erased it. It's certainly a possibility, but again, it's an argument from silence. It's an absence of evidence argument. But so is mine, right? I just have to concede. It's an argument that I think works based on this movement from the Ark of the Covenant's not an idol, but it is, but it's not, but it is, to this later thing with Josiah and then into Second Temple Judaism, where it's like you just absolutely cannot have idolatry in any manner, where the Ark of the Covenant because once that Ark goes into the temple, you stop hearing about it. I think there's one passing reference to it. And so something happens to it. The Holy of Holies is a big deal, where the Ark is supposed to be behind the curtain. You can't see it, but the temple takes on all the veneration that used to be ascribed to the Ark. So it's a great suggestion. I like it. I'll look into it.
Well, and the idea of, right, those, even the external, right, the other regional shrines, because normally that's like, Hezekiah is doing this cultic centralization. And by bringing all of the ritual practice into Jerusalem, into the temple, you're consolidating power with the priesthood and with the king. And so it is interesting to think like, did you do that because you didn't really have any choice and everything had been destroyed? And so now you're like, oh, wait. No, we did that. We brought everything together. Yeah, that's an interesting alternative reading to that. That really flips like the power of that shift on its head of, you're not in charge of this, you're just responding now.
And it works. I'm smiling because it works with my theory. So thank you. I'm certainly gonna like this idea because it works because Hezekiah is ultimately responsible for the destruction of the Ark of the Covenant, which is my theory, right? Which is what I'm suggesting. Hezekiah is the one that got rid of the Ark. Now, did he give it to Sennacherib and say, "Here, take this? This is a lot of gold. This is our trophy, right? This is our symbol of the presence of our God. This is the thing that you're trying to capture and take anyway."
It's the palladium. Correct.
Right?
If
That's
you're
exactly
reading
what it is.
the Trojan War, they go in
Right.
and they steal the palladium of Athena. We have the same thing. And it's been given or taken by the enemies before. The Philistines took it and it travels around the cities. So we know within the biblical narrative, it's been this prize that's sought in battles. Maybe.
And it either wasn't included in the narrative or it was in the narrative and it got redacted out or whatever. What we know is that after this period, we don't hear much about the Ark because it's all about the temple. They're a landed people. They're not a nomadic people.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't hear about a nomadic people looking for a portable presence until Ezekiel, right? Once they're and they're starting talking about the Merkavah.
Yeah.
So I like the idea.